Hello and happy Friday. Welcome, everyone. I'm Zooming to you from here in the teaching kitchen at the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute. I'm Katrine Whiteson, and my partner, Chef Jessica Van Roo, is right next to me here in the kitchen getting everything ready for our recipes today. So today's topic is about microbiome and skin health. And I'm a professor here in the biochemistry department and also the co-director of our microbiome center. So this is my research area. And Chef Jess is an expert, and now we have actually many years partnership of making recipes that are related to different health topics. So I'm gonna get right to it. Well, actually, first I need to explain this image, which is thanks to ChatGPT. So I want to credit the artists of the world over who contributed their art to make this possible. But the idea here is that promoting your health through a healthy diet can also help your skin health. So having a healthy microbiome and a healthy immune system is actually quite linked to our skin health as well. Now, of course, this image is, pretty dramatic, but there's a lot of truth to it that eating a diversity of plants of different colors to contribute different molecules that promote our microbiome can have big health impact. But don't have to take it just from me. I'm going to share some research today so that we can discuss what evidence we have to know that this is true. So just backing up to make sure I start from a clear definition, microbiomes are the collections of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microbes that live in a particular environment. Many of the microbes in the human body live in our colon, the anaerobes in the low oxygen environment of our colon, and they impact our skin health. But we also have a microbiome that's distinct to each part of our skin, and we're going to talk about that today. We now know that the human microbiome composition, like the types of microbes living in these different environments, correlate with a lot of different health and disease states, as I've listed here. So it's a really fun time to be a scientist in this field because we have all these interesting signals, and now it's time to use this information to make treatment decisions that help people's health. So I guess I've actually just introduced us, but here's Chef Jessica and me. And the recipes are available to you on the website. If you click on this link or just Google Culinary Health UCI, you will be able to get to the page. And if you scroll down, the recipes are available there. They were also emailed yesterday as well. So here we are on November 22nd. This is our series for the year. We have our next lecture coming up on December 12th. And so as you can see, it's a monthly series. And this year we're focusing on different health and disease states and how the microbiome impacts them. Today's recipes include Thai coconut pumpkin soup with salmon, which I think is going to be amazing. And as I said, you can get the recipes on the website as well. I snapped a picture of the ingredients as I walked in the room today because they're so pretty, and I'm just really looking forward to this. So if you stick around in about 20, 30 minutes, Chef Jess is going to turn that pile of ingredients into a nice soup. Then she's also got a kale salad with spicy cashew dressing planned. And here's the ingredients there. And here's the vegan chocolate crunch bars that she has planned. And again, here's the ingredients all ready to go. So our human microbial communities have incredible metabolic diversity. For every human cell, there's at least one microbial cell stably colonizing our body through our lives. It means that there's actually even greater diversity of microbial genes because microbes have incredible diversity and a lot of different types of capacities for metabolism, much more diverse than humans. Microbes can live in a lot of different kinds of environments that human cells could never survive in. And so as a result, it means that a lot of the molecules pulsing through our veins are actually byproducts of microbial metabolism. So if I got a microliter of blood, a very tiny drop of blood from anyone in our audience, I would quickly be able to tell, or I would quickly be able to see that about half of the molecules in that sample were actually produced or modified by microbes. And we each have a very individual microbial community composition. You and another person, most of your genetic differences are actually encoded in the microbial communities that you carry with you. It's even true for siblings or identical twins. And now it's getting to be 15 years or so that the idea that disease could arise from a disturbed microbial community is becoming really quite accepted. On the plot I'm showing you here, the y-axis up and down is density or concentration of bacteria in different cell types, in different environmental samples. And on this, with the stars here, I'm showing you, these are the skin samples that are shown on this plot. Now, the colon is the densest area of colonization. We have a lot of microbes for every teaspoon of material in your colon. You have very, very high counts of microbes. That's true for dental plaque too. Soil is obviously famous for having lots of microbes in it. But actually have a look here at where skin falls. A skin punch or a skin scrape or a skin swab, have decreasing numbers of microbes in them. But the amount of microbes you find in a skin punch is kind of similar to what you find in the ocean, for example. So there's a substantial community of microbes living in our skin. There's a lot of different microbial types in our skin as well. So since we're talking about skin, I'm going to start with a little introduction to skin, which is our largest organ. An average person's skin covers an area of 2 square meters. So it's a really big part of our bodies and an important part to take care of. Our skin is turning over constantly. So we shed 30 to 40,000 cells per minute. That's 9 pounds per year, and is related to the fact that dead skin comprises billions of tons of dust in Earth's atmosphere. And most of the dust in a household is actually coming from our dead skin. Our skin renews itself every 28 days. And actually, children renew their skin more frequently than adults do. As we age, that turnover rate goes down. So when you notice how children have amazingly vibrant, fresh skin, in some ways that is a reflection of the youth of the cells themselves because they're turning over so quickly. So from a microbial perspective, our skin is home to more than 1,000 different species of bacteria. There's a lot of different kinds of bacteria that live on our skin. And just to put the cellular turnover of skin into perspective, skin is actually not the fastest turning over part of our body. Our blood cells and our gut epithelial cells are probably the fastest turnover. So we replace all of our red blood cells every 3 months or so. And our gut epithelial lining also has very fast turnover. So when you think about how you are what you eat, it's thought that all of the cells of the human body turn over about once every 7 years, but skin is even faster than that. And so the food that you're putting into your body is the substrate from which all this turnover is relying upon. So that puts this image that I made with the help of ChatGPT into perspective. So the foods that you're eating are, represented by the nutrients in different colors pulsing through the veins of our AI image here. But the idea is that adding in a diversity of molecules from a plant-based diet is the best thing we know that we can do to promote our microbiome health and our immune health. While I was consulting the Oracle, I also asked ChatGPT about what their thoughts were about microbiome and skin health. And actually, I thought that this came back pretty much on par. This was very relevant to the topics I had already prepared to talk about today. And I won't go into depth on every one of these topics, but I think it kind of puts the field into perspective. So skin is really important as a barrier to protect us against pathogens. And our skin microbiome actually competes with harmful microbes for nutrients and space. So it makes it harder for pathogens to grow on our skin because there's already microbes there living in that territory. Our microbiome is important for our immune system regulation, and our skin microbiome interacts with our immune cells. And so there's actually quite a few cases like eczema that we're going to talk about in the lecture today, where your immune system has a big impact on your skin health. It's also very important for wound healing, to have a healthy microbiome on your skin and to have a healthy microbiome to promote immune health. Hydration and barrier repair is another important area where the microbiome and skin interact. Microbes contribute to the production of ceramides and other lipids that support the skin's natural moist barrier. So that can help prevent dryness and irritation. I think it can also help promote healthy turnover of those cells. So you have some power over allowing your skin to regenerate optimally. There's obviously big interaction for acne and oil regulation of our skin. There's interactions with aging and impact on other skin disorders. So we're going to talk about eczema a little bit today. But first, I want to give you a tour of the major types of bacteria that live on our skin. One of the early things we initially realized studying the skin microbiome is that the different environments on our skin support really different kinds of microbes. So the moist parts of your skin, like the crook of your elbow, for example, will have really different microbes than a more dry part of your skin, like your forearm, for example. And then the more oily sites of your skin, like your face and your upper back, also tend to support microbes that do well in that environment. So the names of the microbes are not important. You might remember some of the names, actually. Staphylococcus comes up in the media a lot, actually. And Staphylococcus is a really common and prevalent microbe that almost all of us, or I think all of us, really do have Staphylococcus on our skin, not pathogenic ones, very healthy ones. And then there's some other microbes that are good at handling the dry areas, like the Corynebacteria, or the more oily areas, the sebaceous sites, like the Cutibacteria. Oh, here we go. So Staphylococcus is a gram-positive. It can do well in low oxygen environments, so it's able to ferment, but it's facultative, so it can also handle environments that have oxygen. The Corynebacterium, the one that you see up there in the moist sites, that's a gram-positive. It's an actinobacterium that's actually related to bifidobacterium that you've probably heard of in probiotics. So it can sometimes ferment. It's a facultative anaerobe. And then this bacteria has had its name changed. So it's now known as Propionibacterium. It used to be Cutibacterium. It's a gram-positive, and it's actually a pretty strict anaerobe, which is amazing that you can have bugs that can't survive exposure to oxygen living right there on your skin. But actually, a lot of skin microbes are a little bit deeper. They live under the surface. We'll talk about that. So, okay, so you've learned about the major taxotypes on the skin. This is a fascinating study where skin swabs were taken from 2 people. They took 400 swabs at all different sites, and they sequenced the microbiome and also used metabolomics to profile all the molecules on the skin. And they learned a lot about the biogeography of the microbes living in different parts of your body, and also the molecules. And I mean, some of the molecules reflect if you've been swimming in the ocean or if you've been using cosmetic products. Anyhow, this is quite similar to what I was just sharing a minute ago when it comes to the bacteria and how there's different microbes in the oily, moist, and dry parts of your body. And actually, the feet are kind of a territory unto themselves. And amazingly, have a look here at these pie charts, especially under fungi in purple. See how there's really not that many different types of fungi around the human body in general. But then when you get down to the feet, there's incredible fungal diversity on our feet. And this is totally normal and healthy. It's nothing to be concerned about, but it's a moister and cooler environment. So fungi do better on our feet. And then just coming over here to this beautiful biogeographical profile I was telling you about with the 400 swabs. You can see these are the hands in the middle here of 2 different individuals. And this is telling you about bacterial diversity. Red has higher bacterial diversity. So one of the individuals has higher bacterial diversity on their hands than the other. Excuse me. So this makes you wonder, is it because this person washes their hands more often? Are there other lifestyle factors that influence your hand skin by microbial geography. A lot of the observations we make just lead to more questions. I personally don't know the answer, but it's a very interesting observation. So we've, in the Human Microbiome Project, which I have actually brought up in some of our previous lectures, around 2005 or 6, the National Institutes of Health funded a $200 million project to try to learn what the normal healthy microbes of a human are. And there were several skin sites included in that study. And so some of the observations I've been telling you about came from that. And so just to put it in perspective, how the skin compares to other parts of our body, you can see skin and nostril and hair in this case are all dominated by actinobacteria from that Corynebacterium, which is similar to bifidobacteria, which are considered probiotics in many cases. So that's kind of interesting how the features of these 3 body sites are shared, but quite different from the other body sites like the oral cavity and certainly the gut. So the skin types are the major drivers of why different microbes live in different parts of our skin. Some oily and dry and moist parts have a really different microbial community living on them. And so there's lots of different mechanisms, reasons why we see those differences. Each person can have a different microbial community. So part of that comes from what we refer to as host selection, as in changes in the environment that are driven by that particular host, which could have to do with diet and lifestyle. And, do you swim a lot? Do you use a lot of lotion? Are you taking antibiotics? All of these things will have really big impact on which microbes are able to both colonize and then survive on the skin. Another important point that I want to make sure I make in this slide is that you actually have a lot of bacteria living under the very surface of your skin. So you can see it down here that you have this epidermis and dermis layer, and there are microbes colonizing the glands near our hair shafts, for example. So I'm going to come to it in a second, but if you want to transplant microbes from one person's skin to another, you have to be kind of rough and scrub the surface of the skin because the microbes are not just like resting right on top. They're actually colonizing in that top millimeter or so of your skin. Okay, so I'm going to launch into some interesting disease states that have had some great microbial and microbiome research in the last few years. A really important one is eczema, which is also called atopic dermatitis. It affects an incredibly large number of people. Here in this estimate, it's 1 to 3% of adults worldwide and 15 to 20% of children worldwide. I've heard those estimates in California are even higher, that in some communities, a third or half of children are experiencing some of the symptoms of eczema before the first 2 years of their lives. And it has a really big impact. So atopic dermatitis, the major symptom is unbearable itch. It makes sleep really difficult. It affects attendance at work and school. It can even affect how people choose their jobs because it's just really hard to live well while you're itching all the time. I don't know if you've ever seen what the skin of someone with atopic dermatitis looks like, but it develops kind of a dry red, rashy, itchy looking kind of a rash. And so it's a really terrible burden and just really hard to live with. It's interesting because we know, for example, in other parts of the world where there is less allergy and autoimmune disease in general, skin health is just amazing. So maybe you've heard me talk about my collaboration with the anthropologists at Cal State Fullerton, like John Patton, where I've gotten to study people who live in a pretty isolated village. You have to fly there, there's no roads, in Canambo, so they don't have access to processed foods, and in general, their microbial exposures are just super different. Well, skin health is very stable in these places. People are not getting eczema, they're not getting acne. In general, their skin is just looking really, really healthy. So that's interesting. They're, in a different part of this modern phenomenon where there's been a rise of allergy and autoimmune disease because it's not happening in those parts of the world. Here's a really interesting strategy for treating eczema. And, this is just one example, but I think it's a really interesting one. A group of researchers, in an attempt to improve symptoms for eczema, they studied the skin of healthy people, especially they were paying attention to the zones of the skin where eczema often can get quite bad. It's often in the more dry parts of the skin, like on your elbows. So they collected the skin of healthy people in those zones where eczema patterns often arise. And they found that healthy people often had a bacteria that the people experiencing eczema did not have, this Roseomonas mucosa. And so they made a probiotic out of the Roseomonas mucosa and sprayed it onto the skin of the people who were experiencing eczema. And I think it's proceeding through different types of clinical trials right now. So I don't want to pretend I know the final answer because it's still a research question. But it's a really interesting idea to try to use probiotics, especially from healthy people who are not experiencing these kind of symptoms, to help with eczema. Here's a study using a bifidobacteria that I actually mentioned in our previous lecture. Excuse me. And in this case, the intervention is with a probiotic for the gut. And so in breastfeeding babies, they provide a bifidobacteria, the bifidobacteria that's capable of breaking down breast milk sugars or breast milk fibers. And they just enrolled the last participant. So again, this is very cutting edge, new ideas that I don't have all the answers yet, but I personally have been anticipating the results of this trial for many years. I have a lot of optimism that this is going to be helpful. As you might remember, in our last lecture, we were talking about how people who are babies who have the bifido that can break down the breast milk sugars, that means that their guts are dominated actually by this bifido, which could crowd out other pathogens, and those pathogens would otherwise be able to inflame the immune system. So by having the baby gut colonized by these bifido, that will prevent as much inflammatory response. And so they've actually enrolled 270 babies in this study, and soon we should have results to see if this helps to prevent atopic dermatitis or eczema from arising. Something we can do now, and there's lots of evidence for this, here's one paper I like, is to eat more fiber. So here's an example of a study where they show that eating more fiber, which allows your gut microbes to produce fermentation products like short-chain fatty acids, has a really positive impact on skin health and reduces symptoms of conditions like atopic dermatitis. So that gives me an excuse to launch into my favorite topic, which is how we have a big fiber gap in the United States. And an average person in the United States is eating half of the daily recommended allowance. So we're recommended to eat 20 to 40 grams of fiber a day, and most Americans are only getting about 15 grams a day. So the advice is quite simple. I mean, this is going back to Michael Pollan, or your grandmother's advice, which would just be to eat foods, not to eat foods that your great-great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food, to the extent possible. And it's in some ways the best advice we have. It's very hard to collect really good evidence in nutrition. Sometimes we can't even agree if an egg is healthy or not. I view eggs as whole foods and very much healthy, but it's hard to get studies going together with clear evidence like that. So my main advice would be that we can really trust this advice to eat food, to eat less processed foods, and to the extent possible, getting plant-based foods that are fiber rich will help you fill your fiber gap. So what foods would those be? Well, avocados are an amazing example that I personally didn't know about myself until a few years ago. When you feel the creaminess of avocados, that's actually fiber contributing, not just fat, to the creamy texture of avocados. So think about beans or lentils when they're quite soft and maybe blended up. They also have a creamy texture. That's the fiber. Berries are very high in fiber and low in sugar despite their sweetness. Beans and lentils are a very quick way to fill your fiber gap. A half a cup of beans will get you a good 8 grams of fiber and really help you fill your fiber gap. And chia seeds are the same. Chia seeds, 10 out of the 12 grams of carbohydrate and 2 tablespoons of chia seeds are in the form of fiber. So if people ate an eighth of a cup, 2 tablespoons dry chia seeds a day, that could really fill their fiber gap. And just to make it clear what the fiber is doing, it's not only about roughage and keeping things moving from a physical scrubbing type of a perspective. It's actually that the fiber will persist in your digestion. So here's an image of the digestive tract starting up in the duodenum, where, the small intestine, and going down to the colon. If you eat more processed foods like white rice where the fiber has been removed, it will be absorbed really quickly and there'll be nothing left by the time you get to where most of the microbes in your body live. The anaerobic bacteria in your colon depend on fiber. So if you want anaerobes in your colon breaking down fiber and making all these healthy fermentation products like short chain fatty acids, you have to fuel them by eating fiber. And it has systemic impact. It's relevant to a skin topic as well. And so what are some of the impacts of eating high fiber? Well, it reduces glucose spikes. It reduces chances of developing obesity. It helps with heart disease. It also increases nutrient absorption, also providing nutrients from plants, of course, and all these beneficial metabolites that can help the gut epithelial lining of the epithelial lining our gut, which actually also helps with our gut barrier integrity. Just to show you what that looks like, if you're eating dietary fiber, then the bacteria breaking down the fiber will produce short chain fatty acids, these molecules here, which feed the cells lining the gut epithelia. And we have these tight junctions connecting the layer of cells at the surface of our gut epithelia. And if you're eating fiber and having enough of these short chain fatty acids, then those tight junctions stay healthy, which can keep your gut barrier strong and prevent leaky gut. So that's among the impacts of fiber, which is, as you know, one of my favorite topics. But really, the advice is to eat foods with lots of different colors so you get molecules from the different plant types, and to try to eat minimally processed foods, whole foods to the extent possible. Okay, here's actually a really favorite story of mine, from a scientist, Dr. Chris Calawart, who actually refers to himself as Dr. Armpit, and for good reason. And he has a whole TED talk about this that I actually really recommend. But just to give you a brief glimpse of this fun story, Dr. Armpit, what he did was he actually helped people who were experiencing terrible body odor by reducing the microbial colonization at the underarm skin of the people experiencing terrible body odor. And then he did microbial transplants from the armpits of people who did not have terrible body odor. And I think he even did this with some identical twins. If you read this study, there's several people where he's done this procedure. Like I was saying, you have to kind of scrub a bit to get to the microbes that are under the surface of the skin. But this was apparently pretty effective. And I thought it was fascinating that you could change something that you might think of as fundamental to yourself, body odor, but actually can be quite impacted by the microbes that happen to colonize your skin. And there's a solution for it here. So we were talking about acne earlier and how the bacteria that colonize the oily parts of our skin developing acne. And people take, especially teenagers, sometimes take antibiotics for years to treat acne, which could have a lot of other really big health impact. So I'm not promoting any one company, but I just want to share that there are some really interesting alternatives to antibiotics that you can use to treat acne. And here's one. This is actually a phage. So this company, Phyla, they're based up in San Francisco, and they are using a phage. So phages are the viruses that infect bacteria. And they have harvested phages. So the viruses that infect bacteria will kill the bacterial cells. So they have harvested out these phages that will kill the bacteria that are causing acne. And so rather than having to take an oral antibiotic and decimate your gut microbiome, you can apply to the surface of your skin these viruses that will go and kill the bacteria that are important for the acne developing. So I love their advertising too, that phages are like tiny bouncers kicking out the acne causing bacteria. But anyway, like I said, I'm not endorsing any one particular product. I'm just sharing that between diet and other strategies, we might be able to reduce our use of antibiotics. Okay, I have a few more studies to share, but I also want to make sure that I give Chef Jess enough time to cook. I'm good. Great. So here's another favorite study. I have a lot of favorites, but for good reason. So in this study, they were looking to see, I mean, to be honest, they were interested to know if babies brought the microbiomes of their parents closer together. And so when they set the study up, they also included couples who had a dog with the idea that the couples with the dog would actually have a less similar microbiome, and the couples with the baby would share more in their skin microbiome. And they studied fecal, oral, and skin microbiomes from 60 families, but I want to tell you about the skin part because it's just fascinating. So household members, especially couples, shared more of their microbiota than individuals from different households, which makes a lot of sense, which is so interesting because it means when you get married or choose roommates that you are going to be influenced by the microbes that they carry. And especially skin. Dog ownership, it turned out, actually significantly increased the shared skin microbes, which makes so much sense because we all know dogs are bringing us all closer together and licking all the surfaces around us. But I just thought that was fascinating that their premise was that the baby would bring the parents more close together, but actually dogs did even more so. So this suggests that direct and frequent contact with our cohabitants can significantly shape the composition of our microbial communities. And then here's an even bigger study that was done on the island of Fiji. And this is the Fiji Community Microbiome Project, where they did shotgun sequencing on 287 people living in 5 different agrarian villages in the Fiji Islands. And they found that women harbor strains more closely related to those by their familial and social contacts than men, and that the transmission patterns of oral and gut-associated microbes weren't always the same. So I thought that was really interesting that women, the microbes in the social networks were more closely connected by women than they were by men. And so, yeah, why could this be? Maybe the women are having more social contact time with their kids. I think it's really interesting to think about that. Okay, so that brings me to a summary of things we know that you can do to support a healthy skin microbiome. So nutrients like fiber will help sustain a healthy gut microbiome and immunity, and this will have big impact on your health in general, including your skin health. I mean, our skin, this 2-meter largest organ of our body, will reflect our health in general, of course. And then, here's just some common sense tips, but they could be relevant for the microbiome as well, that we should avoid over cleansing. So harsh soaps can strip your skin of beneficial microbes. So in some ways, we're better off leaving it alone. As the skincare industry becomes more aware of the microbiome, I can see this happening, that there are a lot of products that claim to have prebiotics and probiotics. They're not all well studied, and the claims on the packages are hard to trust. So I do not mean to endorse any one product, but the idea of using microbiome-friendly skincare is a great idea. And using gentle cleansers, for example, also is also helpful because you do want to clear the oil and the protease, the different things off of your skin, pollutants that attach during the day. I think cleaning your skin gently and regularly and moisturizing is a really good idea. And then, kind of common sense here, but avoiding antibiotic overuse is definitely going to help your whole body and your skin microbiome. However, if you need antibiotics, go for it. One thing you can do is try to eat fiber while you're getting the antibiotics. Definitely there are times when antibiotics are going to save your life or really make you safer. So I do not mean to avoid using them when they're necessary. So just avoid antibiotic overuse. So with that, I will turn it over to Chef Jess, who has maybe the Thai coconut pumpkin soup is first. I'm
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
So here's the recipe. And as I mentioned, you can find the recipes on the website. You can even just Google us and you will find it's the top hit and just get to the recipe links that way. And so yeah, here you go. There's that link again. Here's our.
Oh, did that work?
Yeah,
Stop.
that's great.
Go.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
That's great.
I thought you wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Cool.
Oh, I see Camber has provided the website. That's great.
Nice.
And I will keep my eyes out for questions. So please feel free to ask. We have a 5 key takeaway summary that we will send to you afterwards as well.
Okay, I think you're still unmuted, so they will hear everything you say. If you want, I don't know. Okay. And so we're going to make our Thai coconut soup first. So one of the things I think I want to emphasize about all the recipes today is I went heavy on pumpkin and a lot of zinc items. So zinc can help heal, and so it's one of those things that a lot of people will automatically run to seafood too. So they think they have to have it is the best source of it, like oysters, clams, shellfish. And you do get a lot of zinc from those items, but there are other ways of getting zinc into your diet, pumpkin being one of our favorites. And since it's pumpkin season, kind of went crazy with pumpkin and those types of items. And so we're going to make the soup first, though. So let's grab the soup. And of course, I don't have a pumpkin. I have a butternut squash instead right now. But similar. And if you want, you can even use kabocha, which is a little bit easier to work with sometimes. So when you get a butternut squash like this, or you get a pumpkin and you want to peel it, the easiest thing to do is to microwave it first. If you microwave it, it becomes easier to cut and then peel it. That way you don't hurt yourself. They can get kind of scary after a little bit. So you can buy already cut. I've got butternut squash, but during the holidays, like around this time of year, you can find pumpkin too. And so you can use either one. Move this really quick so I can do some knife skills. Onion, bell pepper, and some lemongrass. You can use frozen lemongrass too. You don't have to use fresh. And these ingredients actually are all very, very ready. They're available around us all year round. So if you are in California, you're lucky and you can make this pretty much all the time. So I'm gonna go. Let's get going. So red bell pepper. I'm gonna start with the shallot. Shallot as a garnish. You can fry it a little bit and then serve it on top. You cut it pretty much the same way as an onion. They just make you cry a little bit more. So actually, I'm just going to start with the onion because I'll use that for garnish. And cut it in half and then peel. And you can use the peel for more flavor if you've got, if you're trying to make stock right now for Thanksgiving, keep all these trimmings. All of it is good for like a turkey stock. You can make it ahead of time and not worry about it then. I'm going to cut dice. And I have a pot going right now. And in that pot, I'm going to add a little bit of oil. So there's one ingredient that I'm going to add in that's not in your recipe because it's not easy to find, but if you can, it does make Thai food taste more Thai. So first, let me chop up some garlic, and then I'll show you that random ingredient. Lemongrass is one of them. Lime leaves is another one. And then we go into the world of gingers. So let me finish this garlic really quick, though. Thai food usually has a lot of garlic, and so go excessive. Okay. Got those. Okay. Let me do, before I get to my random ingredient or my ginger, I'm going to do my lemongrass too. So for lemongrass, you only want to use the bottom portion of it. We grew lemongrass in our kitchen this year. It's probably the easiest thing in the world to grow. It's like a weed. So it's like ginger. It'll take over your yard. It's like bamboo. So if you want, try growing it. It's actually really easy. The problem is that you only ever use this bottom portion of it. The top part, you do get a little bit of lemongrass flavor, but not much. So you can save it for things like teas. A tea's good for it. You can just put it in soup too. But what I like to do is I'll actually go in with a knife and not cut through all the way, just kind of bruise it. And that kind of exposes all the oils, kind of helps get more flavor out of it. You can even take like a mallet to it and hit it. It's really up to you. But the more you do this, the more flavor of that lemongrass you're going to get out. And if you can't find fresh lemongrass, you can use frozen. Stock up on frozen lemongrass and just have it ready to go whenever you're making soup. Oh, I got something stuck. Okay. This is galangal. So galangal is considered white ginger. It's a type of white ginger. There is actually white ginger that's young ginger. It's very different than regular ginger. It's woody. It's not easy to cut. You can buy it frozen as well. You want to be careful with it, but it really gives a different flavor than normal ginger does. And when you cut it, you want to saw it because it's so fibrous. And so you want to go in. And I don't know, I'm going to give you a slice and maybe you can explain the smell. I don't know if you can smell right now, but it smells like gingery. And it's not ginger, it's woody almost, right?
Yeah,
It's a nice,
it smells good.
it does. And so it's just a different ginger. It is more expensive though. So if you are trying to buy it, you can freeze it. Don't waste it. Take this, cut it, and then freeze it.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is good, right? And bell pepper?
It's almost a little sweet or something.
It is, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I think they make galangal candy. Ginger candy's big too. And so they have the same properties. And if you like it, it's one of the ones for Thai food, just makes Thai food taste more like Thai food. And now I'm going to take some red bell pepper and slice it up. You can dice it, you can chop it, whatever size you want. There is a lot of red bell pepper usage in Thai food. All right. So now I'm just going to stir fry all of this up. Got a pot here. And I'm going to add some oil. Oh, they gave me my oil too. And then I'm going to add all these fragrant things inside. Oops. Perfect. And give that a good stir. So one of the things we're going to add in is salmon. And we get into a lot of discussions with salmon in this class just because there's so many different types. My kids call sockeye salmon the dry salmon. And so there's different salmon that you can get. We just did a fats class and we're talking a lot about fish. Mackerel's a good one, but it really varies based on what waters you're getting your fish from. If you don't like sockeye, instead of buying the farmed Atlantic, this is what you should buy: coho. Coho salmon isn't a true salmon; it's coho, and it doesn't taste as fishy as sockeye salmon, but it's not Atlantic salmon, which has slightly been over-farmed, like it's just going crazy. The nice fatty salmon. Fish, you want to be careful because if they're in ocean waters, they have a tendency to carry worms. But then if you're eating farmed fish, you don't know what they're feeding it. So you play this game of scary waters or like random food that they feed the fish. So it's a game. What I like to say is just vary it. Canned sardines are really good. The smaller the fish, the better. But if you're trying to just get a little bit more omega-3s into your diet, salmon's a good way. Different salmon, though, will have different amount. And the main thing I want you to do is this. For this soup, we're not going to keep the skin. The skin has a lot of those fats, though. So you want to take the skin off. So if you're watching me, I'm just taking my knife and gently sliding it through. I want to do it as thin as possible so that I can still keep the skin. What I'm going to do with the skin then is take it and air fry it. And I can air fry it, and then I can use it as like a crumble on top of salads. I can use it as seasoning, something salty. So think of skin of the fish as something that you can add for seasoning. These were frozen, and so they're a little bit harder to fillet. I just dunked them in water.
We just got a question to hear the name of the ginger again. Galangal.
Oh, galangal, yeah. Galangal. I was just looking at an app on how to pronounce things correctly, too. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
I think that's right. I've heard that, too.
Galangal.
I took a cooking class in Thailand once,
Yes.
actually, when we used it. I remember. And we got another question about chia powder versus chia flour. And I would say chia powder is a little bit more processed, so it could be absorbed more quickly, potentially, but it still has a lot of nutrients. In a way, it makes the nutrients more accessible.
Yep.
And it's great if you are prone to diverticulitis, like if you have inflamed pouches in your gut and you don't want the chia seeds to get stuck. So for people who have a family history of diverticulitis, I think it could be safer.
Use the chia.
And maybe it's more palatable. I mean, I don't know. Do you ever
Yeah.
use chia powder?
No, I haven't used chia powder. We use flax a lot, and I'm assuming it would be exactly the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would use it. And it's almost like if you have any recipe that has flour in it, it's
Mhm.
easy to add a couple spoonfuls of something like that
Yeah,
and get more nutrients out of it then.
for sure. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
And then I'm adding some red curry paste. So when you add red curry paste, you need to add a little bit more oil if it looks dry. What you're trying to do is you're trying to literally break down the flavors of that curry paste. So you want to see the oils kind of go in there, and it'll spread the flavors out a little bit more. Now, red curry paste, if you're around here, there's two brands that I would suggest. The most common one being Maypoi. But Maypoi is a little bit, it's strong. It's strong. And that's what we're using today. The best brand, and I'm going to choke right now. The best brand that I find is one called Maeseri, Maeseri. They come in little cans, not big ones. And they just are a little bit lighter. The one that you should probably avoid, unless you really just don't like spicy food, is the Thai brand. So there's a brand that's called Thai, and that's the one that you find mostly in supermarkets. That one it's good, but it's not spicy at all. So if you don't want spice, you can add that. Now I'm going to add everything in here, including my butternut squash or pumpkin. Now, if you don't want to use whole squash or pumpkin, that's fine. Just use a can. All it is one can. One can is about one pumpkin or one butternut squash. So you can go in there and just use one. I'm going to cook this until the squash gets a little bit soft, and then you can blend it. So we're going to blend it by hand and then add the coconut milk. So a lot of people add coconut milk early. Coconut milk splits sometimes or like separates. So you want to be careful when you add it. It has a tendency to break. So you don't want to let it boil too much. And then we're going to add our salmon. So we're going to let this come up to a boil, do its thing. And we are going to make our dessert now. Because you can't get away without making dessert. And I love this. I've been trying to figure out how to showcase this ingredient for quite a while now. Puffed rice. So Rice Krispie treats are one of those things that apparently they give a lot out during Halloween too. I didn't know. Rice Krispies are, there's nothing really that wrong with it, except that I believe there is still oil. So puffed rice is made in two ways. It's with steam and in a controlled environment. And so it just like puffs up. The other way is you can deep fry it. In Sprouts, Whole Foods, nicer supermarkets, you can buy puffed rice, and it comes in different forms to the point where you can actually get puffed kamut, which is like an ancient grain. It's not something that we eat a lot of. It's still a wheat, so it's not gluten-free. But there's different forms. It looks like smacks. I don't know if anybody ate smacks growing up, but they look like that. The ingredient in here is just organic puffed kamut. So they don't add any oil into this. Now, what is sad is that it's still not high in fiber. It's still only 1 gram, but it's not a white rice, right? So when we eat Rice Krispie treats, it's usually white. So think of the kids love things that are crispy. And so this can become a base of something that a lot of kids would then eat. And so what we're doing is we're going to do a similar idea to Rice Krispie treats, only not with marshmallows, but with chocolate. Oh, here it is. So we're going to add chocolate. And if you can find cacao butter, use cacao butter. I'm using coconut oil. It's hard to find cacao unless you're Whole Foods actually might have it, or Mother's Market. I'm at a Sprouts, and so they didn't have any. Or you can order it online on Amazon. Cacao butter is just, it has like the chocolate part taken away from it. So it's like a white, almost buttery looking substance. This will kind of hold everything together for us. Double boiler. See, there's water on the bottom and a pot on top. If you're uncomfortable with this, use a glass bowl. Because what I want you to make sure is that the water never touches the bottom of this bowl. Because if it does, it means it's going to be too hot and it will seize everything. It'll actually cause the chocolate to kind of seize up and not taste very good. So we're going to mix all of that, melt it all down. And then we've got these great ingredients that we're going to add in there as well. So I've got a little bit of date syrup, some nut butter, and then our seeds. So sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, a little bit of vanilla, and then our dried fruit. So it's just this chocolate mixture that we're going to mix everything in, and then our puffed rice. Show you what it looks like when it comes out. So then I pour it all into this container. And you just want to make sure you have, you line this with something that you can pick it up with. So I usually just take a parchment sheet and I cut it in half and half and then fill this. Keep it in your refrigerator. And then you can take it, this peels right off. And you can make as many bars. 10 is usually what this recipe calls for, but you can go in. And it's got the pumpkin seeds. So if you don't like pumpkin seeds, you can switch that around. Or if you want some other dried fruit, you can, but it's really pretty when you cut it open just like that. And you've got that nice dried fruit in there with the rice as well. A nice, simple recipe. Go for it. Ooh, that's a good question. I would say no. It depends. Did you have it refrigerated? Because mostly curry paste, we don't refrigerate. If you had it refrigerated, then it should be okay. It just gets stronger and stronger, I feel like. But in the future, just freeze it. You can freeze it. In the future, freeze it, and then you're good to go. It's cheap enough. Just go buy another one. I don't know how expired it is. But yeah, definitely. It can last quite a while.
Couple questions about using probiotics to handle skin problems. In one case, what about skin probiotics and digestive probiotics? I mean, I cannot endorse any one brand. I just have to be honest about that. I mean, there's not always a lot of evidence supporting their use. It doesn't mean the idea is not good. And so it might be worth trying and seeing if something helps. But I guess it's really hard to say. You would need more evidence to know which ones would be effective. I think we'll have that in the future, but just right now. And then there's another one about if fermented foods, like the molecules in the fermented foods, could cause allergic reactions, like yogurt or fermented cabbage could produce histamine. Have you heard of that? I mean, I've heard of fermented foods. I mean, some of the molecules coming out of fermentation can be considered toxic, certainly at higher levels. My feeling is that in moderation, they're probably okay for most people, but it's of course something you would have to pay attention to if you try it yourself. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think it's individual, what it is that affects you the way that it does. Yeah, the histamine thing is, I feel like it's, if everyone could have tailored nutrition, we would all be very, 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 very healthy people. And so I think as much as we try to say overall, these are the things you should eat, I think each individual still needs to look at what they can eat on their own.
I think we can also build up to being able to eat more things. So I think that's also, it's like your gut is a muscle, and the more different things you eat, the more capacity you have to digest them without issues. So I think it's also something we can work towards.
And it's funny because today, or is it yesterday, I think it was New York Times has a article. It might not be New York Times, but it's beans are the nutritionist's new fave food or something like that. Yep. And so it is. Beans are going to make a huge comeback, and they need to, because it is what is going to make sure that society survives through everything that we can't eat all this meat. And so the last recipe, really quick, if you've ever had sweet greens, cashew, spicy dressing, this is a little bit of a knock on that. And so a lot of people like these like dressings made from nuts, and that's great. The problem is if you're buying them prepackaged, they've got a lot of additives inside. Dressings are one of those things you really can make on your own. So all it is raw cashews, okay? Water, so you do need a little bit of water in there. I've got garlic and ginger, and I'm going to keep the skin on the ginger because it's an organic ginger. Rice vinegar, soy sauce or tamari, sesame oil, a little bit of nutritional yeast, yikes, or not. Chili flakes if you want it, because this is spicy. Oil, which I'm not going to add right now, but a little bit of date syrup and chili too. Okay. So those are all, I'm going to scooch over a little bit. And then I have expeller pressed canola oil. So that's what's going to keep it nice and whole for us. And a little bit of miso too. And a lemon. The miso gives it that umami flavor that you're sometimes looking for. You're just like, it's not rounded out. And sometimes just adding miso helps. And then I've got my garlic and lemon. And again, dressings will last in the freezer, refrigerator. This one I wouldn't put in the fridge for more than 5 days, but you can freeze it. Then I'm going to come over here and give it a good squeeze. Nice. And then if you want to hang around while I finish making this soup, you can. Keep asking questions if you want. We are at time though, so if you dip out, I understand. I'm going to add my coconut in there. And I'm going to fish out my lemongrass. And that's why you want to keep your lemongrass whole too, because you want to be able to go in there and take it out. So I had 3 pieces of lemongrass. Not that if you ate a little bit of lemongrass, there'd be any problems. We're just gonna add, I think that was it. I swore I had a large piece in there. But no. And my immersion blender right over here.
I love those. They're so easy.
Yeah, having an immersion blender around helps a lot. I've tried a lot of different brands, and yeah, the one you get at Costco is probably the one that you should use. Oh, now before you leave, if you are still around, fish sauce. I used to tell you to buy 3 crab brands. Stop buying it. Buy the squid brand. Going forward, it doesn't have additives. The 3 crab brand has additives. So stop buying that one. Huh? 3 crab fish sauce.
Oh,
So buy the squid brand or red boat are the 2 brands. There's the soup. And then now, after I've blended it, I'll go in and add the salmon. And that way it just poaches it almost. It doesn't actually like really cook it through. We're just using the residual heat to heat up the salmon. A lot of Thai food is made this way where they have a broth and they just add the meats into it. Larb being another one where they do this way too. So you can just go ahead and add your salmon in there just like that. And then you can serve it with rice, roti, any kind of grain that you would want. And that is it. And so for the kale salad, if you wanted, you could make a kale salad out of kale. We had some red cabbage as well. And we just toss that all together with the dressing and some carrots. I'll still make that though. So, but thank you for joining in today, everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Great.